Overall, real combat isn't seen much in the Super Mario games. Sure, you hear Mario scream yippee or whatever, but never any sounds associated with fighting. However, we do see a lot of kings in the series, a surprising amount actually. So what would happen if some of them would start fighting each other? For example, what would happen if the noble kings Babar and WHOMP and their forces seen in the first ever 3D Mario game took each other on in a battle? Well, let's find out. First, we will have a look at King Babar. Now, he's mostly recognized for being the first boss in Super Mario 64 and its remake. In the game, he's guarding the Power Star, which Bowser entrusted him with, and doesn't give it up without a fight. In battle, you have to do one simple thing. Run around to the back of him, pick him up, and toss him 3 times. But if he's thrown off the mountain or baited into walking off, he accuses Mario of cheating and the battle starts over. So he's at least a man of honor. And in the remake, where you can also fight him as Yoshi, you need to spit bombs at him 3 times. So it's similar. After defeating him, the Babar buddy at the beginning of the level will express gratitude and note that the big Babar is now just a big dud. In other words, defeated. The lands he rules are the Babar battlefields, where a lot of others of his kind are found, as well as Goombas, Koopas, and a giant Chain Chomp. Now, King WHOMP is also seen in Super Mario 64, and presumably is a member of the Koopa troupe. When he appears, he states that he's angry about how people treat rocks, and seems to want retribution. He attacks by falling face first in an attempt to crush you, and while flat on the ground, you can ground pound on his back 3 times to defeat him. However, he has also fought in Super Mario Galaxy, where he has a couple of new tricks, like being able to create shockwaves with his crush attack, and he can also stomp his foot to produce several miniature whomps called patons that chase after you. The place where you will find him is on top of WHOMP's fortress, where you will encounter dozens of his kind, and also thwomps, piranha plants, some stationary enemies, and an owl. Now, in order to figure out who would win this battle, we will look at a number of things to find out which king and their army would win. We will be looking at their powers and abilities, base, and strategies. Let's start with our first point. Here we can see that King Babar and his forces have very simplistic abilities. He personally can only pick things up and throw them, like bombs or you. His Koopas and Goombas just walk around, and the other Babars can only really blow you up. Overall, it's not the worst though. The Babars could do major damage, while troops like the Goombas and Koopas distract the enemy. But the WHOMP King also has some amazing forces that could crush entire armies, with the WHOMPs falling on top of enemies. But the other scene at the base can't really move. Well, maybe the piranha plants can, since we see that in Super Smash Bros. However, that's not really canon. So I will take it with a grain of salt, to be honest, since we have never seen it in an actual Super Mario title. Now, in the end, this shows us one thing. King Babar has a lot more different types of forces, which gives him tons of options, while the WHOMP King only has his own kind to fight with him, while his other forces are stuck in his base. So clearly, King Babar wins this round with his great selection of troops and abilities. Now, on to the next topic, their base of operation. Which of the two is better for this big showdown? First up, the Babar battlefields. These are basically big green fields with some hills, a mountain, some sort of trench, a floating island, and a couple of other things. Their leader can be found on the top of the mountain, which also seems to be an important landmark for them, so the goal of any enemy army would be to take it over. However, this won't be so easy. There are a good number of forces there, as well as traps like gigantic balls rolling side to side. These would make scaling the mountain a gigantic undertaking and also extremely difficult for any army. The moving balls part at the start would already be a nightmare. Even if they got past that part, then enemies on top of it could throw things down to hit them, like bombs. And then they even have cannons all around the place, which could be used to shoot projectiles at the army. So in general, it would be very hard to launch an attack on them, giving King Babar a good chance. But what about the other base? WHOMP's fortress. Is it any good at all for repelling enemies? Well, for starters, this is actually a military stronghold of sorts, unlike Babar Battlefield, where we almost see no structures at all. Now, if you thought that King Babar's base was good in any way, then you will be shocked when realizing what an army has to do in order to get through here. Just look at what Mario has to do in order to reach the top. Running over bridges that fall apart, thwomps that try to crush you, other stationary enemies that want to push you off, all kinds of platforms moving in weird directions that you must use, and there's more, making it impossible for any army to invade this base. Well, in my opinion at least. The only type of enemies that have a chance are the ones that can fly. However, that's not an option for King Babar by the looks of it, making it an almost impossible battle for him. Just imagine tons of Babams, Koopas, and Goombas running through these obstacles, all falling off or meeting their end one by one, with only a handful at best reaching the top. So thanks to that, King WHOMP wins this round, because the title Fortress is extremely fitting for this place. Now let's move on to our very last topic, their strategies. What could they do to counter each other and win? Well, King Babar, for example, has a couple of different options when it comes to taking down WHOMP. The very first tactic he could use is explosives, because that's the special ability of the Babams after all, and it's ridiculously powerful. Just imagine this. The WHOMP troops come to Babar battlefield and charge towards the mountain to take out the king. However, they're very slow, so out of nowhere cannons start bombarding them from the mountains and some other places, while Babar sprint at them from all directions. This would be extremely effective. Sure, a lot of lives would be lost on both sides, but it would mean that King Babar has a really good chance of winning. His only other option is to use the gigantic chain chomp, letting it rampage through WHOMP's forces, destroying them all. And of course, the king would help out during these battles, leading his troops and taking on the other king in battle. And the other king can easily be blown up. We even see him throw bombs at Yoshi in the remake. But what about King WHOMP's army? What kind of tactics could they use to secure victory? Well, their defenses are beyond amazing, so here they don't really have to do anything. An army would struggle to get past all these platforming challenges. However, the amount of troops they have is extremely limited. Only the big, slow, and awkward moving WHOMPs are able to go to Babar battlefield. When they're there, it would take ages for them to reach the mountain, and before they even reach it, they would be gone thanks to all the explosives from the enemy army. So they have almost no chance of winning this without a special tactic. One thing they could do is use the WHOMPs as protection for a bunch of other troops that are behind them, as some sort of shield. That way they can get really close to the mountain while being safe for the most part. Sure, a bunch of WHOMPs wouldn't make it, but most of the army along with the king would. However, this is sadly enough not really an option for them since they don't have any normal enemies like Goombas or Koopas. But maybe it's possible since he's part of Bowser's Koopa troop, so maybe he can get some different types of soldiers there. If that would happen, he can actually counter the tactics of this enemy quite well, probably winning the whole conflict even. However, since we can't be certain of this, he will most likely not win this fight with King Babar. The fact that they're all made of stone doesn't help as well, since explosives would turn them into rubble. So keeping all of that in mind, I would say that King Babar would destroy the ruler of the WHOMPs. Also, little side note, if you want to know more about these enemies, then check out my Evolution of videos or my recent versus video with Bowser and King Boo in the upper right corner. The playlists can also be found there, so go have a look. Because when it comes to this video, we have reached the end. It's quite clear that King Babar's explosive troops and powers would destroy these stone creatures along with their fortress. Sure, they can't invade it, but they can always blow it up by sending hundreds of Babams and using the cannon found there within the fortress to shoot at them. There isn't a whole lot of honor in doing all of this, but it's certainly effective. So the King WHOMP would ultimately bite the dust. But when it comes to a one-on-one versus between the kings, there's actually a good chance of getting a different outcome. But that all depends on how they want to settle this fight. If it's just a simple one-on-one, then I would say King Babar wins, because his bomb-throwing ability would destroy the Stone Slab ruler in seconds. Sure, he could still crush him, but King Babar himself is also really big, and seems to be quite strong. So maybe he will just stop him from falling over when he tries to crush him, or it isn't effective at all. But there's also a third option here. If the WHOMP King does decide to crush King Babar and it's effective, it could be the end for both of them. There's a possibility after all that the slam attack he does will make him explode, and he is huge after all, so who knows how powerful that explosion could be. If you look at what kind of power a normal Babar has and then compare its size to their king, you can kind of understand what I mean by this. So really, there's a big chance that even if it does damage him, that they will both meet their end because of their big clash. Thanks to this, I would say that King Babar has a bigger chance of both winning a battle between nations and a normal one-on-one. making him the ultimate winner of this battle. Also, don't forget the videos in the upper right corner. There's even a playlist there, and they're a lot of fun, so check them out. And who knows, we might even see this battle in a game someday. Although I don't really expect that, because it's Nintendo after all.